Alright, cherubs, this is a statue in New York City's Central Park. The subject is General William Tecumseh Sherman, the Civil War general who famously marched from Atlanta to the coast, tearing up Southern infrastructure and breaking the will of the Confederacy. Sherman was a fully modern general who seemed to understand the usefulness of new technology in war and how to utilize railways to provision large armies, or utilize telegraph to coordinate attacks before many of his contemporaries. And yet, he appears here on horseback, led by the Greek goddess of victory, gilded in gold. He is a United States general of the modern world, draped in the trappings of the old world. Through the 19th century, it seemed like the United States was constantly trying to carve out its own identity in art. From virtuous country boy politicians to epic landscape paintings. Here, though, we have a classic equestrian statue, modeled in the style of Italian Renaissance artists like Verrocchio or Donatello, and led by a classical goddess. This isn't pretending to be a uniquely American sculpture. The sculptor is Augustus St. Gaudens, and this is an example of the American Renaissance style. The United States, at the turn of the century, believed that it was the heir to the Greek philosophical tradition, Roman civics, and Renaissance humanism. Raphael, 400 years earlier, painted representative characters of classical philosophic traditions in his School of Athens painting, and then he threw his contemporaries, like Michelangelo, among those personalities. Here, St. Gaudens studied the great masters of European sculpture, learned to imitate them, created a classical equestrian statue, then threw an American general on top. This particular sculpture was commissioned by the New York City Chamber of Commerce, but other examples of the American Renaissance were commissioned by banking families, railroad tycoons, or steel magnates. In the years after the Civil War, the wealth generated by the nation became consolidated in these types of characters in a way that dwarfed the original Renaissance patron class, which consisted of the Medici, Sforza, or Gonzaga families. The identity of the U.S. patron class changed from valuing the austere craftsman, statesman, or farmer to valuing ostentatious displays of wealth and taste. Collectors began buying artistic treasures from the struggling noble families of Europe and starting museums, serving, appropriately, as muses for American artists. These collections simultaneously announced that American cities, like New York, could reign as the center of world culture just as Athens, Rome, Baghdad, or Paris once had. It's during this time period, as Robert Hughes has noted, that the museum began to supplant the church as the emblematic focus of the great American cities. It's difficult to keep in mind American religion and those Puritan origins of the United States when looking at the many estates of the Vanderbilts or this statue of Sherman. Anytime an artistic style is reborn, the new iteration contributes something to the tradition. So let's take a closer look at this statue to find the American take on the classic equestrian statue. To start, Sherman's horse stomps on pine cones and needles, a clear reference to Georgia and his destructive march to the sea. A northern general stomping over the southern state. This theme, that New York, and the larger concept of the North that Sherman represented, contained within it a terrifying amount of money and power, is emphasized by the shining gold of the statue. Also terrifying is the expression on Victory's face. Earlier statues of Victory from Europe show a calm figure offering a laurel crown, but not here. The horrors of the Civil War were fresh in the American memory, and this depiction of victory does more to terrify the defeated than it does to applaud the victors. Modern warfare can't be stylized as it once was, as I discussed in a video about Civil War photography. Sherman famously summed it up when addressing some young cadets after the war. He said, "Some of you young men think that war is all glamour and glory, but let me tell you boys, it is all hell." And when you look at the face of victory in this St. Gaudens sculpture, that becomes clear. Alright, so I'll be trying to put out a new video on the 15th of every month. Next week I'll discuss New York City's Grand Central Station. If you want to be notified when that comes out, please subscribe. You can also check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the information below. Thanks for watching.